your meeting ID followed by pound. You have not entered any numbers. Please re-enter your...
No, well, we never know. It's too skinny to get the whole can of worms. This is just through the typologies.
coup tonight. We're taking over.
Coup d'etat, I like it. You know, falling off a ladder is fun.
Okay. We're on TV, folks. Let's go. Okay, welcome to our work session on the 2020 Basalt Master Plan. And this is a work session with the Planning and Zoning Commission and the Town Council. So we have a full representation from the P&Z right now. And on the phone, we have Dave Dixon from Cushing Terrell, who's our master plan consultant. And we have Heather Henry, who is our consultant from Connect One Design. And so what we were gonna do today is just ground you a little bit on our schedule and what we're trying to accomplish.
Are we all grounded or just the people who've been bad? Heather got it. Okay.
We're gonna start with just really kind of going over the schedule, and we're gonna go over some of the changes that have been made to the plan and our response to our referral comments. And we really want that to be, fairly short. What we really want is this is an opportunity for the P&Z and the Town Council to talk together. Because if you guys remember, I've said this many times, but both the Town Council and the P&Z adopt the plan. So both groups need to feel that it's part of their plan. We're hoping that both plans can be the same document. So that's kind of the purpose of the meeting tonight. So Dave, do you want to do the next slide where the schedule is? Sure. So here's our schedule. This is kind of the official. James, my pointer's not working. Do I have to? Okay. So we kicked off the process, everyone knows, in March, and we did all the fun public participation, and then in January we started the official review and processing of the plans. We've got through all of this, and we're here. So this is March 10th, where this is a work session with both groups, and then later this evening at about 7:10, I think it is, that's when we have our continued public hearing. So we'll again take comment. If you noticed on the agenda, we were urging everyone to come to this public hearing and make their comment. And we were suggesting that if you provided written comment, that we wanted it by Friday. So the Town Councils then, they're programmed to continue the public hearing until the 17th. And the 17th is the date that the council would adopt its plan. That's what's on the schedule. Thursday, March 12th, that's 2 days from now, the P&Z has their official public hearing. That's like what you guys had on the 27th. Required is part of the formal process. And then, of course, the alternate date for everything is kind of the March 31st date. Dave, do you want to do the next screen? This is the future land use map that's in your plan. This is the 3-mile planning area. You can see it goes from Old Snowmass down to almost Catherine Store. Next slide. We're going to have to move faster, Dave. Maybe it isn't going to work to do it this way. Maybe we're going to have to go back to the PowerPoint. This is the future land use map for West Basalt. The only change that's been made to the future land use map is that we're showing the tree farm in kind of this mixed use residential, because primarily it's more residential than commercial. Next slide. This is the East Basalt flume. What has changed on this in the last couple weeks is that we've graded the key and the primary parcels, which are the Jadwin Stott. We've grade south side. And in the text of the plan, there are provisions about what kind of the arrangement of land uses. Both of those include a low density and a high density. They include got-tos that you have to do. They include the bonus requirements that you have to do to get additional incentive. We've also graded this 17-acre piece that's the Meyer property that's inside we left it in the urban growth boundary. We grade it to show that this area, including the unincorporated Picken County area, is all going to be part of a future study where we look more comprehensively at the land uses on the Meyer property. The other parcel that we included in gray and in green is the Roaring Fork Mobile Home Park. And the reason that we did that, again, is to show that instead of maybe promoting redevelopment at this time, it's an acknowledgement of the complicated issues associated with any redevelopment, and that we'll need to get Picken County and Eagle County involved in those discussions when we move forward. Next slide. These are just our primary and key parcels. Next slide, Dave. This is what the detailed map and the plan looks like for Jadwin. It's exactly what the council saw on the 27th. I don't think that Bill's the only counselor that wasn't here, but what we did is we took out the detailed building layout and put a more general plan. And so this is showing the arrangement of land uses that is desired for the Jadwin Stop property. The change that was made at the P&Z meeting last Tuesday is that they wanted to show a continuous road here instead of showing it as a dead end. So that's the only difference on the map that you saw last week. Next slide. This is south side. Again, this is the map that you see inside the text of the plan, showing kind of a live, work, employment opportunity up in these areas, and a live, work here against the residential neighborhood and affordable housing and residential here. South side, the text, it has a lower level of the 35 units that goes up to 90 with an underpass. But the acknowledgement in south side is just that it's really controlled by the fact that you have the one way in and one way out. And so anytime you come in with a land use proposal, you're gonna have to do a traffic study and prove that that you're gonna be able to satisfy the traffic concerns on this. Next slide, Dave. This is the Meyer property. You know, again, we're showing the desire for having this buffer between Elk Run neighborhood and the future development, showing the community facility and landscape spruce buffer, a buffer here, and showing that area. This area has always been in the urban growth boundary. The text in the plan goes through a little bit of the history about the process that was used on this. There were the 2007 plan showed 135 units. The original P&Z plan showed about 103 units. This is one that there was a lot of attention zeroed in on it, and we ended up just recommending that we need to do a more comprehensive study, mainly to include this area here, which is in Picken County, but is not included in our urban growth boundary. We're not expecting it to go in our urban growth boundary, but just looking at the arrangement of land uses, things that we'll be looking at is, you know, a trail from the Roaring Fork Club, employee housing units over to the Old Snowmass Trail. Be looking at a trail at an unidentified location that's up, provides access to the BLM land. We'll be looking at, is there an opportunity for expansion of the cemetery, and we'll be looking at tools and ways of trying to conserve the ranch property that won't be annexed into town. It potentially might be a zoning, a way of looking at a zoning conservation district, that they don't have that current tool that would work for this because of the amount of land area that you have to have remaining, and because of this site is broken up into area that's already in town. The other thing I think maybe of worthy of note is the plan is still showing the rural lots off of Cemetery Road, an opportunity for 5 rural lots in that area. Next slide. Part of your package that everybody received was a list of referral comments. So we received comments from a number of agencies, from the fire district to the sanitation district to RAFTA to Recycle, and Eagle County, the Forest Service, and also CORE gave our plan to an environmental organization that's out of Denver and asked them to do a review of was there anything missing in our plan. So these are in your plan in the document that you can download from the site, and in the packet today were amended goals and objectives to reflect comments that we heard, and then we wrote in the margin where those comments came from. So by way of example, this recommendation came from the Post Committee, this comment that was from CPW that they would like to see an application on one of the primary parcels very early in the land use process. And next slide, Dave. Just Eagle County provided the most lengthy comments. We had a meeting we met, of course, with the Eagle County planning staff, but we had a meeting with the Roaring Fork Valley Regional Planning Commission in February, and then 2 weeks later, we had a meeting with the Pickens County P&Z. The Eagle County staff sent us the comprehensive 7.5 pages of comments, and many of the comments we were able to address. You know, by way of example, they want us to mention, they're working on this trails plan right now. They wanted to mention, have the plan require a look in compliance with their plan, so we were able to add that. There's a lot of comments that maybe we were light on our references to RAFTA. We added comments from them. Here on this page you see comments that we were addressing from WeCycle. P&Z looked at the plan last week and wanted to emphasize e-bike facilities, so we added in a couple of locations. E-bikes, next page. You know, again, you can see Eagle County mentioned quite a lot. And so we made a lot of different comments. I don't want to go over, just because of time, every one of them. Roaring Fork Conservancy, we had a lot about access to the rivers and access on boating ramps, et cetera. And Roaring Fork Conservancy was hoping that we could, add language about respecting the riparian environment more. And on this one, we reorganized it a little bit. Next page. Here you see over on 8C, where we've made a change to this local governments for sustainability, a policy addressing their recommendations. The other place that we've made comments on coming from them was really in the table that outlines, there's a whole section on green goals and sustainability, and we added some of the things that they were looking at. One of them was they just wanted to make sure that we were using our greenhouse gas inventory as kind of a measure against when we make capital improvements, to make sure that we're getting kind of the best bang for the buck. But they also made a significant number of comments about social equity, and so we've made a comment about making sure that we're looking through both lenses when we do that. And here you see BPAC, the Basalt Public Arts Commission. They had a comment about using public art to message the town's green goals and other goals included in the master plan. And their wording was slightly different, and the P&Z just made it read a little better when they looked at the language. Next page. Again, responding to comments from Eagle County. Next page. This is just flagging. I'm just going to go through our slides so that you guys can have a conversation. This is just kind of flagging the Lake Christine area, and the council's very aware of this. There didn't seem, this just working with the CPW and other agencies about the groundwater testing, and then working on a long-term solution for the gun range and looking at Lake Christine as a potentially a more of a recreation area. Next slide. This is just flagging the Crown Mountain area because I thought that might be a subject of town council discussion. This is an area that, remember, Crown Mountain is not in town. It's owned by the federal government. They are pursuing lease arrangements potentially with Eagle County, and here we're giving direction about the type of development that we would like to see in Crown Mountain, and just talking about that we're not supporting new town-like development in this area with some exceptions, talking about open space and trails in the riparian portion and supporting additional recreation facilities, supporting public works types of facilities, and just identifying that it's potentially is not really the best location for worker housing, and we might consider senior housing on a project-specific basis. Next slide. This is just kind of showing the Crown Mountain area if we need to go back on that. Next slide, Dave. I handed out some proposed language that my intent really is to talk about this with the P&Z at Thursday's meeting, and the council to weigh in if they have a problem with the language next Tuesday on the 17th when they are looking at the adoption of the master plan. But where this language in the plan is it's really kind of speaking to the desired land uses on the flume, and talking about that the land uses on the flume are highly desired and site-specific cases. You can look at other land uses, and this is just kind of talking about, by way of example, deed-restricted affordable housing is highly desired by this master plan, so a site-specific adjustment may be accepted by the P&Z and town council in an area not designated for its use or slightly higher on a case-by-case basis, and just again flagging that if it has locations for affordable housing projects are designated with that AH designation. And part of that is really to address some concerns that Eagle County had on some potential projects, but just to emphasize that this one is saying that we're talking about we want affordable housing projects in the UGB. So again, it's emphasizing that point. Next slide. This is additional language because in the process, we've heard time and time again from both the P&Z and the town council that they want density and infill in East Basalt, but there's no specific language on that. There's language, of course, on Clark's Market. So, this language is just kind of re-emphasizing that in East Basalt area, and this wouldn't include actually Southside. We're encouraging infill of smaller units, smaller lots, and small-scale residential structures. And so we would consider zoning in those areas that would allow that. So it's just kind of going back and encouraging that infill that everybody has been advocating for. I think that's the last slide. Why don't you just pull it to the beginning? of the slide deck, Dave. So that's really what has really changed since in the last couple weeks. And so really this again is just, this is an opportunity for the council to make comments, the P&Z to make comments. This is really set up as our last time to officially kind of meet as two groups. There's a potential that the P&Z could continue their public hearing to the 17th, which is the same day you have your hearing, and we can talk about that too. But it's really an opportunity for the P&Z to share thoughts that they have, and for the council to share thoughts on your behalf.
Well, I would love to hear from the planning commission first, because it's kind of your document, and just hear where you think it still needs a tweak, or if you're happy, or just the thoughts of the commission.
I'll go first on this. You know, this plan, we've been working this for a long time. It was about a year right now when we started on it, and all of us have put in a lot of hours and worked with the consultants very closely to make this as aspirational as we could afford to do. And I think we are all very proud of this. I think this has been a very unified effort, and you know, for all of the work we've gotten, a result that is one that we can all, you know, be very happy with for the next 10 years. Especially the public process. That was a part we put a lot of attention to, and from the very get-go, we chose this consultant because of their strength with the public process. And that was, you know, akin to the our town planning effort, which we also were very excited about, and this was about as close to that as we could get with such a massive undertaking. I think we for the most part have a fair amount of consensus on this, as much as you could get on an appointed board, but for the most part we're all pulling our oars in the same or at least similar direction. You know, it was a lot of work. We've had some moments, we've had some words, but we got through it, and we came to this point where we are all very, very happy with this document. It is for a town of our size, this is about as visionary as we're gonna get. I do think, and this is more of a personal thought on it, but I think that towards the end we got hung up on the numbers of this, and I don't think that's really where a visionary or aspirational document needs to go, really, because we're talking about a direction, not necessarily an exact path. This is our guiding document, and it will be interpreted by many councils in the future. But the part of it that's personal is I think we have somewhat of a shortfall from the housing needs assessment. You know, I think that over the life of the plan, we won't even get to where the housing needs assessment says we should be now. But that being said, I think that what we have in front of us, given the diverse set of opinions in town, is a very useful compromise to get us where we need to go with this plan. You know, all government is that, and I think we did a very admirable job of getting there. I just don't want us, you know, through the last portion of this to get really hung up on the numbers part of it. That's the part where future councils and future planning commissions really weigh in on a case-by-case basis. And so I think the part we want to talk about, and this is the comment I made on our very first meeting about this, is the visionary component of it. That's the part we add to future generations. This is the part where we say things that allow our children to move back here after they graduate from college. That's particularly important to me, since I got a couple of them living at home. One of them in the basement. So yeah, there's that. I thank you all for participating as thoughtfully as you had, and I'm glad we have gotten here without any major blowouts.
Other planning commissioners, yeah.
The only comment that I'd like to add on to it, echo everything he has said. I think it has been a great
a great effort, and I think we've got a good master planning team that really brought the town, all the people involved in it. I think they feel very comfortable. Obviously, there's a great amount of effort and information about affordable housing. That was the #1 click that everyone seemed to hit up front, and I don't need to discuss that anything further. The only comment I'd like to make is that not an awful lot of effort or resolution was put into the Clark Market property, nor the main entrance coming off the highway from the circle into town, on what that could be. And I say that because that could be done very early and very quickly, because it's a separate dollar item and a planning product. Regarding the feeling that I personally have and have continued to have, is the Clark Market is the most important property that we have possibly under control, and that's a loose term also. It's an incredible site. It is the right location. It is certainly the right size for what we've got. It can offer big and little retails that we have. I envision no problem with a 4 or 5 story building right in the middle of it to be the thumb and the anchor that holds this town together. Has an opportunity for mixed use, has an opportunity for hotel that we're having, and it also ties into our second river, which is no small feature, the frying pan. And I just feel that it's an asset that is probably the strongest financial help to our town that can be in it. And I too welcome the council's participation in all we've done.
Thanks, Gino. Other commissioners?
I really appreciate the interface here, and I think if we could possibly meet quarterly and have some sort of more of a relationship, that would be wonderful. I agree with Gino that Clark's Market is a real center point, the heart of this town, and that's what's going to make it flow if we could pay attention to that. And the only other thing is I really wish we had a gateway to this town.
Yeah, I'm gonna start at the beginning, and that's the vision. And I'm gonna quote from this master plan here in front of us tonight. The public outreach process reached far and wide to understand the public vision. One of the outcomes of the extensive research was a vision for density instead of sprawl. So I commend our consultant partners in conducting a very extensive and, may I say, fun outreach program and coming up with a unifying vision for the town that we base our whole master plan on. And I would also like to thank Eagle County for providing the language on transportation, which we have heard from some outside sources. Transportation does not belong in a master plan, but I find that kind of absurd. And here we have some very good identification. The parties responsible for paying or building transportation improvements and incorporate the results, looking at transit, especially mass transit, RAFTA, but also bicycles and pedestrian, even though we can only use those 6 months out of the year, and work with Eagle County and CDOT to update the goals for each entities while not contributing to growth that is not supported by this master plan. And that is why I have always supported fairly intense, dense growth in the core, the Jadwin property, Clark's Market, and why I have opposed any significant development on the Meyer Ranch. I will note that in our memo of what P&Z comments were enacted, eliminate some of the remaining language scattered throughout the plan for the Meyer property, which indicated that it would be a good location for density. Because if you use our fundamental principle and our metrics for density, mass transit, public services, public buildings, clearly the Meyer Ranch is a good example of suburban sprawl. But I just want to say that our discussions in the P and Z, I think we all would agree with these transportation and transit comments that have been added thanks to Eagle County. And I could only wish that Eagle County did as good a job with the tree farm as they've done suggesting additions to our master plan.
On that,
Short and simple, it's been a year-long adventure. I think we've, gotten incredible feedback from lots of different entities, both within town, around town. I think we've tried to incorporate as many of those comments as possible. I think it's a forward-thinking document. I think it could lead us in a good direction. It's not perfect, but it really covers a lot of the items that we need to move forward and help move the town forward, so I'm pretty excited about it.
Tracy?
I would just like to commend the group and the effort that was made to get out and about in Basalt and have fun get-togethers to get the feedback. It was a pretty phenomenal process, and we'd never done anything like that before, or to that. We did a little with the Art Town, but you guys did a great job, so I really commend that. And I don't have anything new to add. I'm proud of the document. Not perfect, but it's a really good roadmap. It's what they always are, is a nice roadmap to hand off to future. But yeah, I think it's great, and I'm behind Gino and Bill and their comments too, everybody's.
Thanks,
So.
Tracy. Robert?
Well, I know a lot of us didn't realize what we were gonna get into when we decided to do a new master plan. It was a lot of work, but particularly for Susan and staff. And they, as much work, effort as we put into it, I'm sure they did 2 or 3 times what we did, and they deserve a lot of credit for keeping moving forward and keeping us heading towards our goals, which I think we did a really good job of. You know, we kind of got a little bogged down in some of the details towards the end and maybe lost sight of some of the really good big picture things that we did, and that's really what should be highlighted. You know, the sustainability parts of the master plan are great. Green building, you know, there's a variety of housing proposed for all possibilities, which I think is really important. You know, we're able to implement a lot of carrots and not so many sticks, and I always think that's a really good thing to do. So I think it's a really good document for a lot of reasons, you know, and there's some things less so, but we all learned a lot, and again, I think we need to thank staff for all that they did.
Thanks, Rob. Well, I'll just say, looks like everybody from Planning Commission is here. That's amazing in and of itself. We haven't had that many meetings over the years, joint meetings, where the whole Planning Commission, well, the whole council's not here, but the whole Planning Commission is here. And I, for one, think we have come a long way. I think you handed it off to us in such good shape to start reviewing ourselves, but I personally am ready to adopt this. My favorite thing in the world for my very end of term would be to adopt this together. That would make me so happy. I can't stand it. For one thing, it would be weird to adopt separately, in my opinion, when it's, so I would love it if we could make that happen. And, you know, like everybody says over and over about these big projects, everybody's not completely happy, but I think we're mostly as happy as we can possibly be with this. Because it's really been a joint effort with, of course, Planning Commission and staff and consultant doing, you know, the lion's share of the work. So, I mean, I'm ready to do it. And we only have about 6 minutes to make comments, so who on council would like to make additional comments or have any suggestions for anything we want to see different by the 17th? Anything?
Nothing other than thanking all of you for all the work that you've put in over the many, many months, and that we've all come to a document that both P&Z and council are, I'm assuming, I'm making an assumption here, that we're all happy with and willing to adopt. So thank you all.
Ryan, Bill?
Same.
Same.
Tons of praise for the team that pulled this together and for all the hard work. I am actually, as I noted to Susan, particularly pleased that we solicited input and received extensive input from some key stakeholders, notably Eagle County. That is particularly important to me as we move forward, because we're not going to move forward without support and participation of counties and communities with which we work very closely. And so thank you very much for doing that, Susan, for reaching out to them. Also, have to agree with Bill and Gino. This is a wonderfully aspirational document that did take a step back from the weeds of the numbers, which I didn't see much value in poking around in, but stepping to a higher level of, again, of objective seeking, of planning makes so much sense to me. And Gino, the Clark's Market parcel is indeed the next great kind of lift that I think we will all try to address together.
Thanks, Bill. The one question I had, did we see comments from Pitkin County as well?
Well, I didn't get a final response back, but when I talked to Pitkin County, they thought the minutes that they had of the joint meeting were a really good documentation for their referral comments, and they were gonna confirm whether that was the case. But you all received, I didn't include them in this package, but you all received copies of the P and Z, the minutes of the joint meeting of the two groups. And a lot of it was, they were very interested in our approach to sustainability and kind of acknowledging some of the work that they're working on that issue. They acknowledged that they were willing to look at zoning if we were kind of approaching the Meyer property. Anything else you guys want to jump out and say about Pitkin County?
No, I did want to say something about Pitkin County and Eagle County for that matter. Eagle County allowed us a lot of input onto their master plan, and the fact that they responded in kind and we incorporated, I think we really kind of help move forward any sort of IGA type things that will happen in the future between Eagle County and ourselves. And so that was really good, and that was all staff's doing, and I really, really appreciate that. But also, we met for the very first time with Pitkin County. We've never met with them before in the 20-something years I've been doing this, and that was a big deal, because we had a lot more in common with them than we had ever thought. And I'm hoping that we can continue to forge a little bit more of a relationship with them than we have ever had in the past. And I think that's one of the greater things that came out of this, that's really not in this plan at all, because it's sort of an ancillary, that was an unintended consequence of this whole effort. And I think that will be a good one on both ends of the counties.
Well, and they reciprocated.
Yes.
I mean, they were very much as much as we liked it, they liked it.
That's great. That's great.
So we made the offer to participate with them, and they made the offer to participate more with us, and I'd like to see that continue.
Well, then,
Hey,
let's
two-
make it work.
Two quick comments, if you don't mind. The first one is, one of the things that I felt good about is that all throughout, there was none of the Old Town versus Willits. Everything was kind of moving, trying it together, so there wasn't a competitiveness that would hurt both sides. The second very brief comment, and I'm sure you probably realize it, but I have to say it, is the town is damn lucky to have Susan and James on our staff at the head of the planning. They've done a yeoman job and have probably got 80 hours a week into this.
Okay, well, given, I think that we've got a lot more love and gratitude we could express. We've had it very difficult to get out of here and back in here to start our meeting on time. So I'm going to say one last thank you to all of you in the room, basically, for the hard work you've done. I'm happy to leave with this getting done. It's great. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you.
Now, let's go eat something. Since the last meeting.
Since the last. That's the section there. Let's see here.
I just hug. I do it anyway.
Thank you.
I'm only barely at risk. More at risk than you.
This.
So Gary, why don't you, since we're not really rolling yet, why don't you read the Basalt isn't inclusive for us?
Sure. Basalt is an inclusive, sustainable mountain community that boasts both historic charm and progressive vision. It is an engaging place to live, work, and play while offering an abundance of creative, professional, educational, and recreational opportunities.
Nice job. We actually had a citizen group that came up with that. It still works. Ready, Pam?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so, why don't we call the meeting to order at 6:02-ish? And Pam, could we get a roll call?
Absolutely. Let's start with Ryan Slack, because he just took a bite.
He just took a bite.
Good job, good job.
Bill Infante,
Here?
Katie Schwer. Here. Jennifer Riffle, Jackie Whitsitt,
Here.
Gary Tenenbaum,
Here.
Auden Schindler.
Here.
18 is present.
Thank you so much. And as always, we would like to thank Grassroots TV for being here and running our meetings live. And also, if you miss them, you can see them on grassrootstv.org. Our videographer this evening is Shannon Buckner. Thank you, Shannon. Yes. Tomorrow morning is the Mayor's Coffee at CC's from 8 to 8:30. Brian is usually there, our town manager, and me, and sometimes the chief, but not lately. Okay. All right, so this is our Student of the Month section of the meeting. And we always are really excited to present to our students. This month, our students are being awarded for citizenship. Excuse me, my nose is running. And basically it says, do you share, this is what the teachers look at. Do you share to make your school and community better? Do you cooperate, stay informed, and vote? Vote, I don't know. Be a good neighbor, obey laws and follow rules, respect authority, and protect the environment. So I didn't get these passed out, but. We're short. Gary, do you wanna go first since you've got one?
Sure. Is Gage here?
Okay.
Gage, come on up.
Hi, Gage.
Hey Gage, you can come
Right
on
there.
up. Come on, we gotta get you on TV. You can go in the front. We gotta get you on TV. So, these are all written by your teachers. So, what do they say about Gage? Gage displays good citizenship when working in teams and giving his best effort for the benefit of the group. He is always a very respectful kid who brings tons of smiles and motivation towards learning. He's always involved in trying to get others involved. Most recent example, the blood drive. He's upstanding and friendly and helpful and kind, respects the heck out of his teachers, that's impressive, and is always looking for ways to improve himself and the school.
Yay.
Nice of them.
Congrats.
Good job, Gage. Yay. Auden, you wanna go next?
Yeah. Marcus. Marcus here? Oriana? No? Oh,
Marcus. Okay, how about Brian Slack?
Melissa Simone Vasquez?
Melissa?
Melissa?
No, Melissa? Okay, Bill Infante, do you wanna
Okay, glad to
give it a
go.
shot?
Ethan Machuca. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to salute you. Ethan is a stand-up citizen at BMS. He goes out of his way to help others and can be counted on to be respectful to classmates and all staff members. He stays informed with what is going on, for example, reading Shakespeare. Can you give us a verse?
You don't have to.
Ethan was a leader in a lunchtime arts and crafts group as a school project. Ethan is a true role model for other students at Basalt Middle School.
Yay. What about us women? Congratulations. Good job, Ethan.
Mine was not there.
I have Jessica Smith.
Jessica, woo!
Jessica Smith is a quality student who always exhibits interest and enthusiasm to help others. She has the motivation and positive vibes to encourage peers to keep working hard each and every day. She is involved with the student council and being involved with the school, finding ways to better our community. Great job.
Who taught that girl to shake hands? She's good.
Yay.
Okay, I hope I'm pronouncing this right. Kaylee Cochran, can you come up here? Dad can come with you.
Dads can come too.
Dads can come too. Hi, honey. How are you? Pretty dress. Okay, here's what they have to say about you. It was Kaylee, right? Kaylee is a very intelligent girl. She's very loving, caring, and empathetic with her peers. Big word. She shares toys with those who don't have any, even if it leaves her without one. Okay, that's gonna get me. For Christ's sake. Not only is she great with her peers, she's also great with her teachers. She's a very good listener with great manners. She follows classroom rules. She loves to draw, paint, and write. She looks forward every day to doing small group activities because she loves doing schoolwork. She's a very bright and loving girl. She will go very, very far. Congratulations.
How about that? Can you do it? Can you do it just once? Okay. You don't, she doesn't have to. Thanks to all the parents for raising such wonderful kids for us to enjoy in Basalt. And because you got this award, you will also be able to get a pool pass. The kids will, not the parents. And also, if I think we're finished, because some of the people were missing, but if you'd like to step out into the hallway, there's gonna be a photograph taken right now, and then you are free to go get like an ice cream cone, right? She almost smiled, This one? Yeah. Oh, where'd that come from? No, just Ryan, it was the one that Ryan had, thank you. All right. Make sure the kids get it, thank you. That's not the end of my fun. Next one.
We still have April. We still have April.
Okay, our next item is the consent agenda. It's the minutes from February 24th and a proclamation regarding 2020 census. Is there a motion?
Mayor, I move the town council approve the consent agenda items as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Great. We would now like to take comments from the public of 3 minutes or less for items that are not on the agenda. If you'd like to come up to the microphone and just say your name and your comments for items that are not on the agenda, we would love to hear from you.
Hey, I'm Stacy Kraft. I live over in Elk Run. After the 2016 mayoral and town council election, a number of questions were raised about the way ballots were handled and processes of the election at town hall. Election integrity and confidence in the voting process are the bedrock of our democracy. And I'm here tonight to call your attention to a few of these in the hopes that the town will reassure voters that they have heightened systems in place that ensure voter integrity or ballot integrity in this upcoming April election. After the 2016 election, the previous town manager was interviewed by Bruce Brown, the district attorney. Here are some excerpts from that interview that outline some of the things that I'm concerned about and that everyone should be concerned about. The DA asked about some procedures, and Mike Scanlon said, I mean, the part that I found odd was the whole poll worker part where Pam and Doug McDonald, who was the mayor's poll watcher, would go back into this one room, close the door almost all the way closed, and then read through the ballots that were collected every day for a period of 2 weeks. And you know, I sort of wondered, why aren't we using one of our polling officials? You know, you typically have 3 that you have for election days. Why wasn't one of those in there who's independent of the candidate's poll watcher? The DA asked, did you see the ballots as they were arriving? And Scanlon says, yeah, some of them because my door is right outside the ballot box. The DA asked, were there any other issues regarding the integrity of the election that concerned you? And he replied, well, probably the second or third day, most of our mail's delivered to the finance department because you want to get all the checks pulled out of the town's mail first and then distribute it. And I went back there, and Judy Tippett, the finance director, wasn't there, nor Bridget, our accounting clerk, and they're set a bigger than usual mailbox with all the ballots that had been returned, either wrong addresses or the addressee. And I would guess there were 200 to 300 of those. And then I grabbed them and took them to Pam's office and just waited for Pam to come back from lunch and said, you can't leave return ballots sitting around because anybody can just, they have the person's name on it, so all you have to do is pull the ballot out and pretend to be the person and then put it back in the ballot box, and no one's the wiser for it. That's significant. The DA asked, do you know whether or not there was any process established in order to verify signatures on the ballot? Scanlon replied, no. The DA asked, you don't know, or there were no procedures established? And Scanlon said there were no procedures established. The ballot box outside of Town Hall has a notice on it, and it says it is a violation of law for any person to collect more than 10 ballots for mailing or delivery in any election. It seems like that would apply to all elections. Maybe it doesn't. But the next comments, the DA asked, did the mayor ever deliver ballots? And Scanlon says yes. And the DA says on how many occasions? And Scanlon says 3 that I saw. The DA asked, do you know what the quantity of the ballots that in total or on these individual occasions that she delivered? And then Scanlon goes on to talk about one time that the mayor carried in a stack of 25 to 30, and that was one time, and he says that he saw that happen 3 times, but it doesn't say the quantity of the other 2 times. I hope that you will take this really seriously. Ballot integrity is extremely important. These elections are really important, and I hope that you'll reassure people. Ballots are getting ready to be delivered in a week or so. I hope you'll do some stringent communication on the Basalt Facebook page and in the newspaper and stuff to reassure voters that you have very different systems in place so that the ballots are watched constantly in the 2 weeks up to, not just on election day, but the 2 weeks up to the date of the election.
Thank you, Stacy.
Okay, yeah, please make sure that that
See you later.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
is it okay if I just
Please
state
do.
for the record the amount of time that I've seen Pam taking care to get ready for this election? I'm not sure what the insinuation was there, but, you know, she's been working tirelessly, especially in light of having an instant runoff, which is our first, to really get the election judges nailed down, and then just to make sure that this election does go off without a hitch. And so I just want to commend her for her hard work, and I appreciate your integrity in this process, Pam.
And Pam had no hitches in the last election either, so we may want to address that perhaps on the page as was suggested and
Yeah.
correct the record.
Yep.
Super. Okay, anybody else? Now?
Can you hear me now? I'm usually pretty loud without it, so, thanks, Steve. Okey dokey. Our next item is mayor and council reports and comments. Anybody? Okay, managers report.
Yeah, just wanted to bring, I'm gonna ask Chief Knott to come up and give you guys just a quick update on the COVID-19 virus and sort of what we've been talking about, doing behind the scenes, kind of getting things squared away for our community. But also just to reiterate, reinforce what's happening sort of at the county levels. So as you know, we're split between Eagle County, Pitkin County. We've been participating in calls with their leadership, sort of between me and my colleagues and Chief with his colleagues, just getting the latest and greatest information. So, we know that we have some confirmed cases in Eagle County, still waiting. There have not been any confirmed cases in Pitkin County at this time, but certainly we're keeping a close eye on that. And the distinction, in case you've heard, with those confirmed cases, or the case that came out of Pitkin County, technically it wasn't considered confirmed in Pitkin County because the person had already left the country. But results should come back here in short order for those that were tested yesterday. It's about a 24-hour waiting period right now to get results back. We are depending on the public health officials. They are in charge of this incident. The incident management teams from both counties have been stood up. The emergency operations centers, the EOC, are also activated. There's not people actively in them. They are there virtually participating, but are at the ready to take it through the various levels as we move through this incident. So we will keep putting information. We really want to rely on our website, the Facebook page, to push out the updates that the counties are doing. Again, this is their incident, and so we want to make sure that we get that consistent information out to the public. So it's going to be my charge in all of this to keep the council informed. The council kind of, during one of these incidents in the incident management system generally relies on their staff and relies on that team. So I would ask that if you guys have questions, make sure you're addressing them to me or to Chief. Don't try to call the county staff. If you can call your counterparts at the counties, the electeds, that's fine. But we really try to keep those folks that are in those emergency operations centers focused on the task at hand, just so that they don't get that pressure. And so far so good. It's working. And if there's anything more that you feel like you need from one of us, I think that's fine. Just let us know. One of the things that we've been working on though too is what do we do in town as we progress through this incident. And so Greg and I, along with Aaron Munch, came up with sort of a 3-tiered process. And so right now we're in a stage where it's sort of precautionary stage. The idea with this is a real focus on town staff. We want to keep our town staff healthy for the long run, and the reason for that is that it is our town staff, our police officers, our public works staff that need to be out there if we get a big snowstorm to clear the roads, to be able to respond to life safety issues. So keeping them healthy is first and foremost for this organization, so we can keep the town folks safe. But basically the stuff you're hearing on the CDC: wash your hands, keep distance from folks, cover your sneezes, some of those basic things. Stage 2 is basically us going into essential services. So this is a heightened awareness of possible infection, limiting physical contact and proximity with the public for our staff. So this gets triggered when we have confirmation of 2 or more cases in the Roaring Fork Valley and still have that known source of infection. So right now we're tracing things back to the young lady that was that was in Australia, right? So they're trying to make contact. At that point, when that happens, which could happen this evening, we may pull back on some of the services. So things like routine traffic stops, we may avoid some of those, light people up, but not necessarily pull them over. That's not to say from the public to go and speed, please, but, if clearly if there's a life safety, reckless driving, DUI, they're getting pulled over. Routine bar checks, things like that the officers are usually in and engaging with folks in restaurants, maybe pulling back on that, looking in, making sure everything's okay. VIN inspections, exchange of documents. Documents definitely can have those germs on them, so we want to just be cognizant of that, as we get a lot of that through town hall and in our respective workplaces, PD. And perhaps suspending work-related travel and training. We're already seeing some meetings getting canceled, but just making sure that that everything we're doing, kind of keeping folks safe from exposure from out of the area. And then start drafting a policy for virtual meetings. So right now, our meetings are in vivo, but we may get to a point that we don't want to assemble, and we can still do that over the internet or over the phone, and so we're looking into that, but we need to create a policy around it. We'll also be drafting an emergency declaration. That emergency declaration, moving into stage 3 now, is sort of reactionary. At that point in time, the trigger is that we have a confirmed case in the Basalt community, and that we no longer know the source. It's being spread through the community, so it's just sort of out there. And so these services at this point in time are more life safety related. If we get a call, for a nuisance dog or something, we're probably not going to go to that call. We're really trying to limit contact with folks at that point in time. So the emergency declaration will be put into place, and we will probably start doing virtual meetings. We'll also look at closing town facilities, the town hall, PD, planning, public works, to the public. We will still be working, and we will still be sort of providing services, but virtually. So if somebody wants to, we'll put information obviously out there widespread, but if somebody wants to have a meeting, it's probably going to be over the phone. So we're going to try to solve as many issues as we can that way. And so, let's see, a couple other things. Deliveries, so those kind of things will still come through mail, predictably. So, we'll take that stuff, but obviously handle with care. And essential services, public health, safety, and welfare, I mentioned them earlier. Keeping the roads open so that people can get to and fro. Maintaining our water supply and that system in a safe manner. Finances, paying bills, making sure that's all in order. And as it relates to PD response, really going to life safety calls mainly. Still being out in the community, present probably in their vehicles, but limiting and trying to limit exposure during medical calls. There's, as you know, a shortage on the masks to be able to protect these folks. That's personal protection equipment. And so to the extent they get exposed, then we run the risk of being down officers, and we really can't have that to the extent we can avoid it. So this is going to be sort of a living, changing document. We put it together. We're going to be interacting with staff around it because it's probably incomplete. There's probably some things we want to think through and things we'll learn. But just wanted to get that out there in the public that we're working on it. We're thinking about the community and seeing what we can do to, make sure we're here if things start to get more widespread. So I asked Chief to come up just in case there were any questions or anything I might have missed, Chief.
No, and when you see that, we're only gonna respond to life safety, we'll still be here. We can handle things over the telephone, nuisance calls, barking dogs, things like that. It's just gonna be a shift in how we do business. We're still going to be in the law enforcement business. It just might not be a personal contact depending on how this plays out. But we'll still be here. the goal of this is to make sure that we're here, and we have to take some of these precautions to possibly do that.
Questions for the chief? We're happy you're there for us.
Thank you, ma'am.
Anything else?
I was just gonna mention that we attended the CAST meeting, so Colorado Association of Ski Towns. It was in Denver. We got a legislative update, an update from an economist, kind of looking at the outlook for this year. COVID-19, of course, was mentioned, wasn't anticipated to be a long-standing blip on the economy, but it certainly may not feel like that here locally and to our businesses and things like that. So definitely something else that's on our mind and at the forefront. And there's definitely some good ideas coming out, so we'll continue to pay attention to that. Legislative sessions going on for another 6 weeks, I think it is, and just kind of tracking that, especially leaning on our friends at the Colorado Municipal League to represent our interests there. So,
Thanks, Ryan.
Bill, did you have?
Well, I was just gonna say, are you gonna provide any further updates from the Eagle or Pickens County calls this morning? Because I found those really, really valuable, and I was curious if in fact any of that information is in the public domain that can be distributed.
Yeah, so basically what I heard, because I was on both of those calls as well, so what I heard is that they'll continue to update that web page, and so we've linked that through our website. So all the most current up-to-date stuff for the community, they'll be adding on to it. And so that's going to be our best source. And then, of course, just as a reminder to the public, sign up for EC Alerts, which is Eagle County Alerts, and then Pitkin Alerts, and they'll you'll get notices if there's some direction for community members. So, yeah.
Because my only takeaway from this call, frankly, or there were many takeaways, but was certainly clear to me that the Eagle County folks have mobilized their incident command apparatus, that they are providing reasonable and appropriate guidance. I was comforted by their representations about kids. Kids are not a high-risk group. Therefore, they have not made a decision to close the schools at this point, but we're very clear that should conditions develop, they will deliver further guidance and may take different action. The groups that are the most at risk are the elderly, those with pre-existing conditions, and for them, they are recommending particular caution. But it was a very reasonable approach that was not laced with panic in any way.
I thought so too.
Yeah.
Okey dokes. Thank you. Thank you, Chief.
Thanks, Chief.
Thanks. Okay, here's a fun one. Greg, I guess you want to maybe stay up here. Looks like it's, it's a reappoint Joe Bauer to the Vail Board. That is Chief Knott. And Joe, come on up if you want.
Front and center.
Not for very long, so don't worry.
I went through this once before, remember?
Oh, that's right.
Recently.
Yes.
So at the end of last year, Mr. Bauer filled a vacant position on the Vail Board, and it was a very short term for the turnaround, a couple months. So his term now, which he's been on for approximately 3 months, is now up for reappointment or refilling. March 19th, 2020 to March 18th, 2024 will be the term. Joe, has filled in, and I think it's appropriate for him to move him into that next 4-year term. I believe the Vail Board agrees with that.
Any opposition from Joe?
To him.
No. As long as I'm still breathing.
That's
Anybody
all we
have-
ask of our board members.
And council members, too. Anybody have questions of Joe or the chief, or is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to appoint Joe to the Vail Board for the next term.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks, Joe.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you for doing it.
Look forward to it. Appreciate the opportunity to volunteer and give a little back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our next one is appointment of Carolina Silva to the BEMC as a citizen member. Is Carolina here?
Carolina was not able to make it. She had to make a quick trip this afternoon.
Oh, you gave us a piece of paper that said that. Okay, we can appoint her
But we can continue to appoint her.
Anyway, okay.
Yes, she'll be a great addition to our emergency.
Okay, I know her, not very well, but, it
Mayor-
sounds like somebody thought about it.
Mayor, I move the town council appoint Carolina Silva to the Basalt Emergency Management Committee as a citizen member for a 3-year term.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much. Public hearing and second reading of ordinance 8 of 2020, an ordinance of the town of Basalt granting an extension of vested rights for Lot B of Mabel subdivision in Basalt, which seems like we just keep talking about Mabel subdivision to me. Maybe not.
Because it's the second.
Last 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
I am Watkins, and here with me is Mark Elise.
Hey, Mark, how are you?
Hi, kids.
So Lot B was subdivided in 2017, and at the same time, a final site plan review was approved for it. However, that final site plan review will expire on March 23rd if the vested rights period is not extended by you all, the council. So Mr. Elise is seeking a 1-year extension of the vested rights. And Mark, do you have anything you want to add?
No, not unless you have questions. I think it's pretty straightforward.
This is a second reading. Is anything different? I don't remember that we did anything on this at first reading.
No, ma'am, you all asked a couple of questions, and we discussed them, and the ordinance that's in your packet has not changed.
Excellent. Any questions or motions, Ralph?
We need a public hearing.
Oh, this is public hearing. Thank you, Susan. We'll open the public hearing at 6:33. If there's anyone in the public that has comment regarding this application, please come forward and make your comment now. Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing and try this again.
Mayor, I move town council adopt ordinance number 8, series of 2020 on second reading.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I think
Yeah, that you
set
didn't
up to
really,
run
you
next
didn't
time.
really.
I figured maybe they count.
I'm sorry, but it's over already. You didn't make your comment to oppose earlier.
Thank you, folks, I appreciate it.
Thanks, Mark.
Cheers.
Okay, resolution 4 of 2020, a resolution of the town authorizing the mayor to execute a memorandum of understanding, establishing and approving Basalt as a member of the Greater Roaring Fork Housing Coalition. Hi, Dave.
How are you?
And to introduce, we've got David Myler here, for anybody that doesn't know him. This item, as the mayor indicated, is consideration of a resolution that would approve of a memorandum of understanding, or MOU for short, that would establish the Regional Housing Coalition and approve of Basalt's membership in such a coalition. As background, Bill Lamont and David Myler, 2 longtime local community members, have been working on regional affordable housing issues for several years now. And they created a regional housing task force and commissioned a regional housing study that was concluded and conducted by Economic and Planning Systems, or EPS, out of Denver. And the council reviewed that in the past. And it identified a significant demand and gap for affordable housing in the valley and the region. And as a result, the Affordable Housing Regional Task Force and David and Bill Lamont have recommended the formation of a coalition in the valley for affordable housing. And it would be a coalition of government entities that would hire an executive director or consultant to kind of get the coalition off the ground. The town has programmed in $20,000 in this year's budget for the town to be a member of the coalition. And the mission statement and tasks for the coalition, which are on the front page of your cover memo as well as in the MOU, identify that it would include collaboration to address affordable housing needs of working residents and seniors in the valley, as well as to be a resource for financing strategies as well as grants, and establishing public-private partnerships around affordable housing. And then it also identifies that it would be assisting members, the town potentially being one, in affordable housing policy creation. So the thought is that the coalition could evolve over time into an authority, but the task force at this point didn't feel it was appropriate to set up a taxing entity for affordable housing, and they thought a coalition was a better scenario at this point. So David's here. I don't think Bill was able to make it. I didn't see him back there. To answer any questions that you may have about the coalition. Basalt Affordable Community Housing Committee, BAC, reviewed the MOU as well as the coalition idea, and they were supportive of the town being part of the housing coalition. So staff would recommend hearing any comments that David has, and then providing council discussion, and ultimately staff recommends approval of the resolution. Dave, you have any comments, or you
just a few, really.
answer
James
questions?
was quite thorough in describing the idea behind the MOU, and it did evolve out of a couple of years of efforts to try to convince, or not convince, but at least interest local governments in the valley in creating a multi-jurisdictional housing authority. And it was felt that we needed to walk before we run, and that perhaps a less formal organization, the coalition that's described in this MOU, would be a better vehicle for collaboration, cooperation, sharing ideas, helping each other out when it comes to affordable housing issues, and also a very valuable resource in researching, gathering information, helping local governments fill in the gaps on the issues that you have with regard to housing, and a variety of other tasks. I mean, whatever this group really wants to dive into, I could see it being a vehicle to put together another project like you have out, the Habitat Project, getting parties together to collaborate and cooperate and create a joint venture to do something as exciting as that. So I think, you know, there's a lot of opportunity here, and I really appreciate the support that we've gotten from Basalt. And I'm happy to announce that the idea was originally floated several months ago right here in this room with the so-called task force that was a leftover from the regional housing effort, or housing authority effort. And KT Zagunis, who's the head of the Garfield County Housing Authority, convinced us that we really, before we form something in the Roaring Fork Valley and then go out and see if anybody wants to join, we really needed to reach out to the lower Colorado River communities, and she did very effectively. And I'm happy to let you know that Newcastle and Silt and Rifle and Parachute and Battlement Mesa all want to be part of this organization, even though their issues are different than our issues, their politics are different than our politics, but we all have one thing in common. Our workforce is stressed, and we all need to work together to try to figure out the way to solve that problem. So they will be coming to the next meeting to talk about the terms of this MOU. And I think that you will send a very important message by authorizing whoever your representative will be to tell them that, you know, the town of Basalt is behind this, not only in concept, but in terms of the specifics of this MOU. The MOU is going to evolve. The one that we'll all approve and sign won't be exactly what you see in front of you today, but it's going to be close, and the concepts, I think, are going to be acceptable. And there's going to be some details that need to be worked out in terms of the management and operation of the coalition. But, you know, the idea, I think, is sound, and so far the support and the enthusiasm among what are 16 governmental entities focused on housing is pretty remarkable. So thank you for your time.
Thanks, Dave.
And if you have questions,
of
please.
Dave? Questions of Dave? Anybody?
Not so many questions, but I was gonna ask how many entities have otherwise pledged support? And if it's 16 plus Newcastle, Silt, Parachute, Battlement, Mesa, and others, this is a great triumph, Dave. I mean, thank you very
Well,
much
it's
for
not,
spearheading
it's
this.
16 including, but
Still a big
still,
number.
it's a big number, yeah. I mean, we live in a unique area. There's 8 local governments between Aspen and Glenwood. I mean, we've got more governments than we probably need, but they do need to work together. They need to find a way to collaborate and cooperate. And I know Bill has been a champion for regional approaches to problems, and I think its time has come. And housing is one of those that I think lends itself very well to a regional approach. You know, the workforce that we have is very mobile. They're all over the valley. They move from town to town. And we need to figure out a way to allow them to live here with dignity and continue to provide the services that they do.
Do you know what the total funding is gonna be? The total annual funding from this group?
Well, we're suggesting $100,000 seed money to get us going. One of the first things that the board of directors and its executive director will do is come up with a budget based on the work program. So right now, the 100,000 is just seed money. It is not a budget. We don't have any idea what the appetite is for the projects that such an organization like this would take on.
But you have that much.
Yes.
Excellent. Anybody else? Or is there a motion?
Yes, Mayor. I would love to motion. I would love to motion that the town council approve resolution number 4, series of 2020.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None,
you, Dave.
of course. Thank you, Dave.
Tireless. And I know you're getting paid well for this one.
Thank you, appreciate that.
You mean like
Fun.
nothing?
Yeah, he's volunteering his time, so
I
I
knew
really
that.
appreciate it.
Forever, for
I know,
years.
it's amazing.
Okay, 7E, first reading of ordinance number 9 of 2020, an ordinance of the town approving a contract to buy and sell real estate with Shelton Properties LLC for the purchase of property located at 2522 Highway 82, Basalt, Colorado, for purchase of property for public works facility. Ryan and Jeff?
Yeah, so I'll kick it off and Jeff can follow up with some of the legal components. But as you recall, I had received direction to go under contract, which we have done for that property in this ordinance for the purpose of expanding our public works operations. So as you may recall, our public works facility currently resides on the south side. It's the same facility the town used before Willits existed, before the south side was the south side. So we're just simply outgrowing the space. We had a particular challenge in trying to find land that would work for us in the Mid-Valley. We've looked at a number of different parcels, and this parcel, that's a little bit over an acre, great location, allows us a good striking distance to get over to Willits, as well as into the downtown area. So likely the plan is to keep both properties, office centrally out of one, and have another location for storage and for supplies and that kind of thing. So as part of the due diligence, which we're in now, we are getting an appraisal done on the property. We're in the process of getting an environmental assessment done on the property, and then also doing site design or site planning to locate buildings to make sure that it would work for us. Right now, we end up housing a lot of our equipment out in the elements, so you know it has a shorter lifespan. We're also housing some equipment over in the Crown Mountain area in a building that's found to have had asbestos and is past its useful life. The roof is caving in, so it's only a matter of time until we get booted out of there. We also have a few pieces of equipment up here on the hill in the old Eagle County shop, which is a 2-bay shop up there. So it's just essentially inadequate for the growth that we've experienced. So found this property and going through that process, and basically what this first reading does is just set into motion that purchase ultimately. It's not a done deal until we get all of that information back. in this due diligence period. And then Jeff, did you have anything to fill in from the?
Just a little bit. I think Ryan summarized it well. This ordinance would approve the real estate contract. The contract was entered subject to council approval. We're currently in the diligence period and reviewing those issues, as Ryan mentioned, including title and survey issues as well. And hopefully we don't discover any issues that might cause us to reconsider purchasing the property, but that's kind of where we're at now in terms of the diligence process, and approval of the contract by council is a condition of the contract, and that's where we are in the process. And once this is approved, the contract's approved, there would not be any additional council action on the property purchase. It would authorize the mayor and Brian to take actions in furtherance of the contract, including proceeding to closing.
Questions?
What's the timeline on those servers, like, from,
So we had like 60 days.
Our objection deadlines are the end of the first, April 3rd, I believe. So we're kind of in the middle of it, another 3 weeks to gather a few more pieces of information.
I was curious about what we think might be the estimated value of this property and what our source of funds would be to purchase it.
Sure, so estimated value right now is the contract purchase price until we get the appraisal back, of course, so that's a part of this. And then source of funds, using general fund reserve money. Basically, we have a policy that states now that we would withhold 33% of our, help me Christie, revenue
Yes.
for a given year.
Minimum fund balance, yeah.
In the
is
fund balance, so that's sort of a rainy day fund. We will still be in compliance with that policy if we purchase this property. And so, essentially what this does, while it's certainly an expenditure of some money that we could hold for, a recession or a rainy day for something else, that policy that exists is just for that, and this allows us to move forward with a needed, piece of property that otherwise we've struggled to find for, I'd say we did a study about 20 years ago of identifying the need, and then my predecessor had looked at a lot of properties and didn't come together. So it's one of those opportunities. Timing is everything, and then one other caveat to this is once you own the property, then it opens up some possibilities for us to seek some grants from the state, so they might cost share with us on improvements over time. So,
can I just suggest that we have a further discussion on the financing of this? Because looking at the sum, again, I want to be confident that we've got what is reportedly here as $1.8 million. I didn't, again, I would have to look back at our budget. You were, of course, the CFO, but I want to be certain that we can do this and preserve liquidity and stability in our own finances.
we'd be happy to bring, that back for you all
Okay,
at second reading, just so you still have another bite at the apple.
that'd be great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anybody else or a motion?
Mayor, I move the town council approve ordinance number 9, series of 2020 on first reading and set public hearing and second reading for March 25th, 2020.
Second.
Sorry, isn't the
We got an,
meeting's on the 24th, or the second reading should be on the 24th, right?
24th, isn't that what Brian
Yep.
said?
Oh, I said the 25th. Mayor, I move the town council approve ordinance number 9, series of 2020 on the first reading and set the public hearing and second reading for March 24th, 2020.
good
Thank you.
catch.
All right, I'll second that.
Okay, further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, continued public hearing, town council consideration of adoption of the 2020 Basalt Master Plan. Susan and Ryan.
Okay, and give me a second to put Dave back on the phone. So James, I need your help for that. you. Hey Dave, can you guys all hear?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yep, can you guys hear?
I'm good on mine.
Okay, I need the clicker again. So this time we weren't gonna do the Zoom meeting, we're just gonna get the PowerPoint, James, so if you could get that kinda up. It's though not that one, the one from Heather. So we are in the official master plan adoption process here, and the town council had a public hearing on the master plan on February 27th, and they continued it to this date. And just for those in the audience, our intention tonight is not to adopt the master plan, but to continue the public hearing and the consideration of the master plan until Tuesday, March 17th, which is next Tuesday. The P&Z also has their public hearing on this Thursday, which is March 12th, at 6 o'clock, and it'll be in this room. And both the town council and the P&Z adopt the master plan. What we talked about earlier in the work session with the Planning and Zoning Commission was trying to have both boards adopted at the same night. So at the end of that public hearing, we'll be continuing their public hearing to the 17th also. So our goal is really to adopt the master plan on the 17th. Well, we put information on the agenda that went out to folks, encouraging them if they wanted to make comments on the master plan adoption, that we would appreciate if they could do it at this meeting, and that if they were going to provide written comments, we would appreciate those written comments by this Friday. And that's really to give the council the opportunity to consider those comments and make any changes before the adoption of that. And at the last public hearing, we had Heather Henry from Connect One Design really walk us through the process. And on the phone today, we have Dave Dixon from Cushing Terrell. And they're our consultants that we hired. They did the yeoman's work. They are the ones that created the citizen participation process. So at the last meeting, Heather went through, all the steps of, where we were with the community vision and kicking off the plan, and the 4,975 data points, all through all the different methods of getting participation. What did people say? What were the key items? How was the plan organized? She went through the 8 value-oriented themes of the plan, and how the plan really relates to the council's strategic framework. And she summarized how the goals of the plan work, and then summarized how the future land use map works in terms of we are looking at a 3-mile planning area, and it stretches from Old Snowmass to about Catherine Store. The West Basalt future land uses, introducing the Eagle County urban growth boundary as well as the town boundary. East Basalt, she summarized, and we did this earlier today, just kind of summarized how the plan now takes there were 8 key and primary parcels. It's summarized how the map now for the primary parcels for Southside and Jadwin is showing a gray color on those parcels, and in the text of the plan, there's maps that go along with that that are more general, like this one here. And she also summarized the land uses for Southside. Again, where we're going with the Southside and Jadwin is that we have a lower density and an upper density, and then we have provisions in the plan on how does someone get to the higher density? What are the got-tos, regardless of whether you're at the lower density or the higher density, and what are the quality of life bonuses that you have to bring to the table? If we could bring up now, James, the others, is this, Dave, this PowerPoint the one that has like the revised, if we have to go back and have the revised tables and stuff, is that at the end of this PowerPoint or the other PowerPoint?
The revised tables will be at the end of the PowerPoint we used previously, at the very last slides.
Okay. And here, this is what I mentioned previously in terms of density bonuses, just kind of outlining, you know, what are the quality of life things that the council is looking for. And then we went through a lot of detail on the densities and stuff. So, James, if you could just flip to the first one. So I think an important, go to the first one and just bring up the future land use map, the one we looked at earlier at the work session, that PowerPoint. So what I want to kind of highlight is that the Jadwin parcel had a density range of 80 units to 180 units. And the south side parcels have a density from 35 units to 90 units, but you only get the 90 units if the south side underpass is constructed. On the Meyer Ranch property, we took a different approach, and on the map it's gray, and we're showing the green buffer between Elk Run and the 17 acres that are inside the urban growth boundary. But we're acknowledging in the plan that what we want to do is have a joint study with Picken County and the town of Basalt to look at what the future outcome for the Meyer Ranch would be. In the plan, it contains highlights some of the things that we'll be looking at when we do that study. And the idea is to look comprehensively at a number of different items, and I can go into that in a little bit more detail. But the master plan presentation, the full presentation that Heather made, is online. Actually, it was filmed, so you could go back to the meeting on the 27th, so you can go on Grassroots and you can watch that. If you want additional explanation before our comments are due on Friday, give me a call over at the planning office. But James, that actually isn't I wanted the presentation from earlier.
Dave's got to share a screen to get to that.
Okay, well, just go to the front page then. So anyway, go back to that map. I'm sorry, that was that one. So on the Meyer property, by way of example, this is the 17 acres that was originally included in the urban growth boundary. It had originally in the 2007 plan 135 units. So what this plan has is it's showing this on the future land use map is actually gray with the buffer and the community facility. There's language in here that says that in this study that we do with Picken County, we can kind of even rearrange how that buffer works. But the idea is to look kind of comprehensively at the 17 acres that was envisioned to be annexed into town, as well as the other remaining Meyer Ranch property that's in unincorporated Picken County. There's 5 rural lots up here off of Cemetery Road that would remain, are remaining on the flume. And the map has like a buffer between Elk Run and those parcels. Earlier today, we had a joint meeting with the Planning and Zoning Commission, a work session discussion. And in that discussion, we kind of highlighted amendments to the goals and objectives that we made from the numerous comments that we got from all of our different referral agencies. And in the packet for that item, we have in the margin a lot of where those referral comments came from. So in other words, we were amending a goal to respond to the fire district, or we're amending it to respond to Eagle County. That's made in the margin. I think one of the things that maybe didn't come across so clearly in my presentation that I made earlier is that we made a lot of changes. You could see how many changes that we made to the goals and objectives and policies, but we didn't make all of the changes that referral agencies asked of us, and we kind of flagged that in the cover memo to that. And some of those items, just dealt with policy issues that we thought were more appropriate for the council to weigh in on. We had the slide by way of example of how we were addressing Crown Mountain. And I'm referring specifically kind of to the comments that we received from the Forest Service and from Eagle County. And also, we didn't address really the comments regarding development outside the urban growth boundary and how we treat the urban growth boundary. I had handed out language at the work session that we were going to have discussed more fully at our meeting on Thursday that a little bit tries to clarify some of the items in terms of the urban growth boundary and how we let me speak first to the future land use map, because we do allow variations, rearrangement of land uses in our plan that are consistent with and further the goals and objectives of the plan, and the language tries to clarify that, and also to try to give an example of like affordable housing, that deed restricted affordable housing is something that the town wants. It has language referencing that we want it though in the urban growth boundary, but that we would look at changes to allow that aren't necessarily shown on the master plan as in that density or allowed by that density range. And then there's also language that we were proposing to add in the plan, was really for us, in that there were a lot of comments from this council particularly and from the P&Z about that we wanted infill in town, but the town doesn't really particularly speak to that real clearly right now. There's a lot of language about Clark's Market, so we were proposing some language that would apply to East Basalt, where we're encouraging more infill, smaller lots, smaller units. But I just wanted to kind of be clear that we didn't take every comment that we received and able to incorporate it. Some of them were too detailed that belonged in more of a work program. But again, a few of them in terms of the urban growth boundary, development outside of the town limits, those things were more policy-oriented issues that we didn't revise the plan for. And I think that's all I really have to say, because what the purpose of this meeting is really an official public hearing. Want to give people the opportunity to speak. And again, if I wanted to run through the presentation rather quickly, because I think most people are familiar with the plan and what they particularly show for a property, but if you're not, I'm available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Susan. So the public hearing is open. It's continued from the last one, and so anyone who is here to comment on the master plan can do so now. Really? Okay. Hearing none, we will close public hearing, and
well, they'll need a motion.
And then continue?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
All right,
yeah.
sorry. We're gonna end up continuing the public hearing
Okay.
as a suggested motion, but you're good.
okay, to the
Sorry.
final.
You're just
to
closing
to
the public
17th.
comment, right, right.
Okay.
Right.
All right, so now what, Susan?
I think we need, in the end, we need a motion to continue it to March 17th. But if there's any additional comments or recommendations that the council members have, or items that they would like to discuss, this would really be an appropriate time, because if we wanna make changes to the plan, we wanna be able to develop that before the 17th. Cause the goal really is on Tuesday, March 17th, which is just a week from now, that we would have a resolution in front of you. It's been drafted already for you to approve the plan.
I didn't hear much in the way of comments or questions during the work session either, which was also a perfect opportunity, but if there are now. Otherwise, I think we're pretty far down this road.
I guess I want to come back to the question that you had raised earlier, Mayor, and it was the question about kind of the concomitant approval of town council and P and Z. Because if I understand from our earlier conversation, it is the prior experience that P and Z would approve a master plan, they would refer it to council, council then approves. In this case, unless something's changed, council would be approving before P and Z unless we do it concurrently on the 17th. So I'm just kind of wondering if we don't want to have P and Z approved before council, because it does seem like we're putting the cart before the horse. It just seems bizarre to me that we would not be taking the recommendation of our experts and then basing our own decision on that.
Well, from the feedback that I kind of interpreted from the discussion at the work session, I think the intention is that on the 12th, which is the P and Z's public hearing, that they would continue it until the 17th, and then we would have the P and Z adopt it and the council adopt it.
Okay.
And we have two resolutions, one for the P and Z and one for the town council, but there really isn't any, requirement that the P and Z adopts it before the town council. There's no requirement that that happens. Our goal, as we stated before, was to get a plan that was the same. And so from our earlier conversation, it looked like, particularly if you do it at the same meeting, I think the plans will be the same. But
I think if we're in the same room at the same time, we can defer for them to go first.
That would be great, because it also seemed bizarre that the last master plan was different. P and Z approved a different plan than council approved.
And
that just makes no sense to me.
well, and that's of course what we were trying to avoid, because what happened is the P and Z approved the plan, and then they sent it to the council. And the council, there were 3 areas where the council didn't agree with the P and Z. So the town attorney at that time was kind of recommending that we'd not go back and forth with these inconsistent plans, and that the way to address it was to do the asterisks. But that was our response to preventing that from happening. Was in the end result, the advantage of having the council adopt the plan is that the council is behind the plan, and so when they're reviewing developments or making capital purchases, that they are consistent with that plan. So I applaud that. There is some awkwardness of like who goes first, and that can happen.
But I agree with the mayor. If we're both in the same room and we can all sign it together, and then we're a united team, and that's kind of important.
Yep.
So would you like a motion to continue the whole ball of wax?
Mayor, I move the town council continue its consideration and public hearing on the adoption of the 2020 Basalt Master Plan to a special meeting on March 17th, 2020.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, I think that unless there's any other strange little odd things coming up, this meeting's adjourned.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you, Dave.
Didn't make Dave do anything.
Thank you all very much.